welcome back to another Touch Designer tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at creating this sort of neon blob tracking effect that I used for a music video a while back, and I would have just included at the start of this video. It's a pretty hectic file, so you can actually just get this entire file available right now on my Patreon, and you can drag and drop your own clips. And actually, let me disable the background. You can drag and drop your own clips into there and your own song or audio interface in here, and it should just all plug and play and immediately work, as along with customizing the text in here. So I uploaded this as a short on YouTube as well as TikTok, and I've had a lot of people reach out just asking for a tutorial on this, and it's sort of a combination of a lot of different effects. So we're going to break it down, go step by step on what's happening, and sort of structure it in a way where I find like the easiest techniques and the most effective techniques first, and you can sort of plug and play from there. Or you're welcome to, again, just go over to my Patreon and download this file immediately. But if we just take a quick look at what is going on in this video. So I'm just going to pause it here because it's quite hectic. It's almost too hectic, especially uploading this to platforms. Like, the compression will absolutely destroy this video, so I highly recommend doing something far less chaotic than I actually did. So what we have going on here is we have the base video, which is this video here on the left. We're using a teamer, so a time machine, which sort of creates this like fluidy delay effect that you can see capturing here in the frames, and I'm sure you saw in the intro, as we switch videos, it sort of bleeds into the next videos. We're then doing some adjustment to make it black and white, and then adding a little bit of noise, well actually quite a lot of noise, to give it the grain. That's all of the video effects, pretty much. Next we're doing a blob track, just a simple blob track, and we're using a cache here that we've just frozen in place. You could actually just use a null even. And then I've set the blob track to be green here, just because I feel like this green looked really nice against the black and white. It sort of gave this neon-y feel. And don't worry, we're gonna go through and recreate this whole thing, but just quickly going over it all. This blob track is also capturing this data and being sent out to position data here, and this position data is being merged with a text file. So we have all the lyrics of the song mapped out here, and then the positions, the XY positions of the blobs, and that's how we're able to track the text onto the blobs. We'll probably go over that last because it's like quite a bit more complicated, and it's quite a small little effect in the overall piece. Next we are getting an edge and then tracing the edges like so, which creates a little sop and then does a little join between them, which basically what it's doing is drawing lines between the edges that we passed in of the video. So that's how we get these little lines going onto different parts and selecting sort of things. It's a really cool effect on its own, and honestly I might even just do a tutorial for that at some point. We have a geometry and everything to render out that line, and then we're combining it back together with the original video. And then we're outputting it, and then we have a simple audio analysis technique here, which we're just using to switch the clips. And I believe you can also, I've used it in points to like control the intensity of the effects, but in this instance, like, I've mostly just used it to switch between videos, which is a really common technique I use rather than editing it. But yeah, that's pretty much like all of the effects going on. I hope that wasn't too fast. I imagine this might be a bit of a longer tutorial and potentially not something as beginner friendly, but feel free to follow along. I'll do my best to explain as much as possible. But other than that, let's just start by breaking down each section. So I'm going to go ahead and just move this up here, and we're going to start with the video, and then we're going to do the audio right after. So I'm just going to separate these two pieces. Cool. All right. So first things first is you need some base video. Now you can either use your own videos by dragging and dropping them into TouchDesigner, or going and adding in your own movie file in and using some of the default ones that they have here. You can't see the window that popped up, but when you click this plus icon, it'll come up with a bunch of default videos and images. I'm then connecting all of them into a switch. We'll come back to this switch later, but for now, just make sure you connect all your inputs that you want to switch between into here. From the switch, we want to connect it to a texture 3D, which will create a bunch of 3D textures. The cache size on default is set to 32. I found that for this case, since it was really fast, that was quite large, so I turned that down to 19. But again, this will be dependent on the sort of videos you have going in, as well as the song. So mine was quite hectic, so I turned it down, but you are more than welcome to keep that at 32. Then we have the text 3D going into a timer, so a time machine, which if you just type in time machine, it'll be right there. And we have the switch going into the second output, which is just combining the two inputs, and that sort of gets us that little bleedy inky effect like that. And if I go ahead and grab another movie file in and just use the banana and press play, and then I switch between that, you can sort of see how it like bleeds into one another, and that's the effects that we got going on. So I'm just gonna undo that. Cool. And then I've connected the timer to a composite. So if you just type in a composite right there, I've then connected the original video in this case to the second input of this comp, and set it to over. So which video you plug into the second input here is entirely up to you. Essentially, because the timer was so hectic and was changing constantly, there was a bit of transparency going on where the video would not be able to keep up and would not fill the screen entirely in time. And so what that meant is I was like, oh, okay, there's instances where I need to have a background that is constantly there. And in this case, I used footage of the fireworks just to be constantly in the background. So if there was any transparency that went on, then it would be filled in with the base video. Pretty optional depending on how hectic your video is, but again, just to be safe, throw that in and pick a clip which would be a nice sort of base and background. Alright, next I have it connected to an HSV adjust. Now there's a lot of different ways. There's even like a monochrome. There's monochrome, and there's also a level for adjusting the video's style. In this case, I've just used the HSV adjust and done a hue offset as well as value multiplying, just to sort of get the exact color that I wanted. Completely optional if you want to turn your video black and white. Next is adding grain, once again optional, but what you want to do is go ahead and create a noise, like right click or press tab and then grab noise from here. Then you can either connect this to the first input and then set output to just noise, or you can just manually type in the resolution right here. No right or wrong way to do it. And then feel free to pause the video and copy all these settings to sort of get this nice grain look here. If you want a less intense grain, you can also add in a level in between, like so, and drag the opacity down in the post tab like that, or just play around with different effects. Or you can also, in this translate option, type in ABS capital T time .seconds, and what that's going to do is add a little bit of animation to the grain. Very subtle, but it's quite nice like that. And if that's moving a bit too fast for you, you can times this by 0.5, which will make it, half as fast. And then in this case, I'm using a divide. There's a lot of different ways to combine noise. A lot of people do like a level here and then use pin light is pretty common, but in this case I'm just using a divide. You can play around with here and see what looks nice for you. I was going for quite a stylized look, so I ended up on that one. Nice. All right. Next I have our video connected to a blur. Now I didn't end up having this enabled for the video, but if I drag it up, it essentially just blurs the background, which gave a nice contrast between that and the blob tracking that's going on. But honestly, for the sake of this video, we're just going to go ahead and delete that because I think it's completely unnecessary. And that's pretty much the video effects. Pretty simple, nothing too crazy going on here, all just very stylized sort of vibes. And next I want to talk about switching the videos. So if we go over here, this is the song that I was using at the time, The Feeling, made by Dwams and Nabi, two very talented musician friends of mine. So go ahead and drag and drop your song into TouchDesigner. You can also use the default song, or you can configure a audio device in. And if you want to learn how to route Spotify through this, let me know about that in the description and I'll be happy to teach that. I don't know if that's like common knowledge, but it's not too hard to do. Then I'm connecting it to an audio analysis tool, which I always recommend using for beginners. It's in the palettes up here when you click this little icon and go to tools and then audio analysis. It just provides you with a nice little UI that you can enable different things. In this case I'm just mostly using the kick detection, but I've plugged that into there and then plugged it into a select so we can select all the values. If you want to interact with the UI, just click this plus and then you can drag the sliders and interact with the buttons like so. And if you want to hear your music, you'll also need to connect the audio file or audio device to an audio out and then configure it like so. Cool. All right. So I can delete these two as I didn't actually end up using them. So here's the important part. We want to connect your video to a count. Now, this count, we then want to go to the counts tab. So keep the trigger on as normal. And then under limit, we want to go from off to loop max min. And then we want to have the minimum set to 0, obviously. And then the maximum set to the amount of videos that you have. So basically it's going to go to like 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we have 4 videos. Okay, cool. Go back to 0. And then it's going to keep counting up in that sequence and go in between each videos. So in programming, it's fairly common knowledge, but you count from 0 instead of 1. So in this case, you would go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you have 5 clips, like I do here, you actually want to set the maximum to 4. So that way you're going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that will be a total of 5. So that's why I have the maximum set to 5 here. We then want to go ahead and click the plus for the viewer active and hover over the kick. And then we want to select our switch and drag this kick value onto the switch index like so and go chop reference. So what that's going to do is pretty much every time the song has a kick now, it's going to switch the video. And if I disable the audio out and press play, I just realized we also don't have any video clips plugged in, but we can just look at the number here. You can see this is increasing and it's set to 0.88 right now, which is just an error on my end. I can actually just click reset like that and it will go back to the number. And yeah, you can see that if I repulse the song from like a little bit into it, that it is increasing with each kick automatically and switching between the video clips. And again, we don't really have anything plugged in, but you can see it just automatically takes care of all the editing for you. And it's a pretty nifty trick. I'm pretty lazy with video editing, as you can probably tell from my YouTube videos. But if you're ever doing any sort of editing that requires you to just edit on the kick, this is a really handy technique to just simply let it be pretty much automated. It's a little bit more extra work up front, but once you've got the technique down, it's pretty self-explanatory. Cool. All right, so that's our audio analysis component for this video. Again, you can use other tools like the highs, the mids, and the lows to add more effects, but we're not going to go into that in this video. We're going to actually go back to that composite we made, and we're going to have two outs. So I'm just going to drag this information like so up to here. So we're going to go ahead and connect the first one to a blob track like that, and then we want a second one going out to a cache or a null even. I'll use a null just so everyone can feel safe in doing that. So yeah, null, and then you just want to click this lock icon. The way blob track sort of works is it will be comparing the frozen image here for changes against the video input that we have, and then overlaying, as you can see, overlaying these blobs against the track. Did I add the null on the wrong one? I might have done a null on the wrong one. Whoopsies. There we go. Sorry, you want the second input to be frozen like that. And yeah, these blobs are basically being like, oh, there's something different going on here, let me track that. And then set the threshold to whatever you want. The higher the threshold, the less blobs that will appear. You can also play with the constraints. Feel free to copy my settings if you want, but this will just set the maximum square size or blob size, as well as revival, and then common can just be left as is. Cool. All right, we don't need this actually, so we can hide that one. And that's the blob tracking. I'm using a lime green, sort of get that surveillance-y kind of vibe going on. But so the color choice is completely up to you and your creative freedom. So next we want to use a little info here. So if we go to the data blobs like we have here and type in info, drag and drop, and then go ahead and drag this blob track onto the data like that. So basically that's just going to give us a bunch of really useful data about each of the individual blobs that are like categorized here in each row. So we're going to take this. So this is the one I have here. I've named it blob track blobs. And we're just going to leave that for now. Again, I want to come back to this later. This is the text information, and translating that is a little bit more complicated. So, and also completely optional. You don't need to add text following around. I just thought it was a cool technique. So we're just going to leave that off to the side for now, in case you want to do that part of the tutorial later. And instead we're going to go to the blob track and we're going to look at the first out. So we're just going to look at this little top half here. Cool. So we want to connect the blob track to an edge. These are the settings I'm using here. Play around with this yourself and find a level that's quite nice. I think personally, you want to make sure you have the blobs still being captured by the edge, and not as much of the video as possible, but sort of striking that balance. And then you want to connect it to a blur. And then again, this blur is just going to make sure that our our trace doesn't get like every little bit of detail like this. So by blurring it, we just get a few little points. And then connect this blur to a trace. So this is a SOP. So if you go ahead to your SOPs and get a trace like this, and then drag your blur onto it like that. And then you want to set the threshold. In this case, I have it around halfway, and these settings like this. And then I believe the filters I've also turned on. I think this might be as normal. Yeah, these are all default. So just set the threshold to about halfway. And with these three nodes here, you sort of just want to click play and let it go and be like, okay, oh yeah, I like that amount. Like, make sure it's getting like just little points of your videos, and play around with the threshold. Be like, okay, maybe I want a little bit less Maybe that's not a bit much. Just play around like that. Play around with the blur, play around with the trace threshold, play around with the edge detection until you sort of have a nice amount going on at all points. So let's say we're happy with what we've got now, and we want to go ahead and connect this to a join. And again, join has its own little tolerance, biases and such, which you can also play around with. And what it's just going to do is join each of the little dots that we have inputted here with a little line going between them. And then once you're happy with that, so let's say I'm happy, cool. We want to right click the join and connect it to a geometry under the comp tab here, like so. We want to add in a camera as well, like this, and then a constant. And then I've made the constant the exact same color as what I had for the blob track. You can actually make it a different color if you want to, and then make it whatever, and then drag and drop that onto the geometry like so, which will get you these nice little green lines. I believe we're just using the default lime green around here somewhere, that one. But yeah, use whatever color you'd like. Everything else should just be set to normal. There is nothing crazy going on. The camera, you may need to play with to line up your video if it's not perfectly one-to-one. What we can do to do that is we can add in a render like this, and that will automatically pick up your camera and geometry. We don't really need any lighting for this instance. And then connect it to a comp. So your output of your render will just be these lines like so, and then this comp like this, we want to connect our blob track, and we'll come back to the other section later. So we want to connect our blob track to the second output, and then just set it to either add, or we can set it to over as well, just whatever you prefer. I had add in this case because it just made it less intense, but let's just say we do over, so it's a lot more simple. And then you should see your lines overlaying with your blobs like so. And if it's not lining up one-to-one, like this one's maybe a little bit off like that, you can go onto your camera and just be like, and scale it up and down until it lines up. I'm using the FOV angle right now, or you can even use the transform like this if you keep the FOV normal. But the FOV setting here is just under the view tab, and that sort of looks lined up like so, and then you can see it just lines up quite nicely like that. And then finally I have it connected to a null, which I'm just using for the background. Cool. So this is what your video should look like so far. You should have the blob tracking blobs like this going on, these little squares, all the joins, and I've fucked around with the the thresholds, so it's quite intense at the moment. So I would, yeah, this is another good point where you could revisit these three nodes and be like, okay, you know what, maybe I'm gonna turn that down a little bit, maybe turn down the strength, and be like, yeah, that's a good amount. Again, this is a really hectic video, so your thresholds will not be the same as mine. Don't just copy the numbers, just play around with those values until you find something nice. And I'm like, okay, cool, nice balance. Have the video, have the teamer effect going on. If your song's playing, it should also be transitioning clips on each kick. Maybe I want to turn that back up. Yeah, that's a good level. So something like that. And now we're going to go ahead and add in words. So one thing to note is you can see down the bottom left here, these words just sit there like that. There's an easy fix to it, but I have not implemented it in this video because when I was rendering it out, I was just using a portrait section of this video, so it wasn't captured there, so I was quite lazy. Apologies for that. And secondly, you don't need to use lyrics like I have in this case. You can type in coordinates, values, do what you want really. You can even just use the actual XY position value as the text. It's really up to you, but I'm going to show you how to do all of that now. But it's worth noting, it's, as you can see, quite a small thing for very little effect, but depending on your video, it could be quite effective. But yeah. let's just do that. So coming back over to here, and this will be a good point to remind you guys that if you do want to just play around with this project file, you can just join up on my Patreon. I've made it like as cheap as possible, just $10 a month. You can get access to every project file I'm making, trying to put out a couple a week at this point, but that's if you want to just play around with this as it is on its own. But otherwise, this tutorial should give you all of everything you need to do. But yes, and subscribe and all that. I did not know how to do this YouTube thing. Cool, all right. So we have our blob track blobs here, which is the info thing we created earlier. We want to go ahead and under the data tab, create 2 selects. One and then, select 1 and then 2. I just copy and pasted those. And then we want to drag the dat column here to be equal to the blob track. And then for this first select, we want to go select columns and then go by name. And then we want to focus on the U and the V here. So we want the first one to be U, like so, and then do the same for V, like that. And then you'll end up with a U and V, which is the X and Y, basically values of our video. We then want to connect the dat to a chop, so we use the dat2 like that, and then this will all be as normal. Then we want to connect both of these to a math. So this is kind of a very important step. What we're going to do for the, so I've renamed this to X and this one to Y, just to keep it quite clear on what's happening. So what's important here is that for the X, in this case, I have a 1920 by 1080p video, so a 16:9 ratio, so landscape video. Under the multi-add tab, we want to multiply this U value by a factor of 1920, so the X resolution, and then for Y, obviously do it for 1080p. If you have like a portrait video, these two values will be reversed, but that should be pretty clear. Basically, that's just like mapping up the position from a scale of 0 to 1 to 0 to 1920, which will be just the pixel width of the video. Secondly, we want to connect both of these two maths to a merge, like this, and then keep the settings as is. So it's going to merge these two values together. And then I've actually just connected it to a rename and gone free Y from all to X and then Y, and we don't need this text value just yet. Oh, no, we do. Do we? What did I just accident? No, we don't need that text just yet. Just renaming it to X and Y, like so. I've then connected this back to a data by using the chop to data like so, and then we should have your X and Y like so. Make sure you toggle include names like this, so we have the row 0 set to the names, which is going to be very important for picking up what is what later on. Cool. So now if we press play, you should see this will update with the XY coordinates of the blobs relative to the video ratio, so the video aspect ratio. So for example, this first blob here is at 797 pixels across and 659 pixels up. You can offset these values a little bit based on the blob size to always have it say attached to the bottom, but we're just gonna attach the lyrics to the center of it today and not get too complicated with that. Cool, all right, so then from this chop to, we want to connect it to another merge like this, and on the second input of this merge, we want to insert a table like this. Now, in this table, when you click edit, it should pop up Notepad when you're on Windows, and you just type in one column. So I'm going to type in hello on the first row, and then my name is, and so I've just done a enter between each of those, and then when I press save, you can see that it's popped up in here. What's important is that we want this first row to always be the word text. So go ahead and type in text before the word hello and then press enter. Again, you can't see this because it's in a different window and I'm just recording TouchDesigner, but you should get something like this. We then want to connect this to the second output of the merge, which will give us this. And you want to go, rather than append rows like that, you want to go set append columns. So we now have an X, Y, and text column, which is going to, in order, set your X, Y coordinates to a specific piece of text, which I just have the chorus or the hook repeating like so. You can play around with randomizing this, adding in different inputs, switching between text inputs and all that if you want, but I just recommend typing out maybe at least 24 in this case. I don't think I ever go beyond like 10 blobs, but it's really up to you. Cool. All right. So what we want to do is now can right click here and go, actually we don't even need to do that, sorry, just right click anywhere and or press tab and add a text. Now in this text we want to specify the specification DAT like so to that, which is going to give us something pretty horrific at first. What we want to also do is set the resolution to be the same as our video, or you can also input the video like so. What this is going to do now is automatically use the XY columns and position the text based on that. I have a little bit of styling going on the text, so I'm using a specific font in here. I've set the color to be white, it's white on default. Also made it a little bit smaller, like so. And that's pretty much it. The text should automatically just appear where your blobs are. And then it's a matter of simply going ahead and from the blob track we have earlier, so you should have a line going straight from the blob track to this comp like this. So we just want to insert here another composite like that. Set the composite to a top. Now again, you can use over if you want instead. And then we want to grab our text. Sorry if we got a little bit going on here. So we have our text here, which I've played around with and made look however I want. Plug it into our comp like so. And then in the input order here, we want to make sure our text is on top. And again, because this has a transparent background, it will just simply overlay the text like this. And you can see they sit right in the middle of the boxes. Now, if you don't like, say, how it goes from the middle like this off to the left, you can also play with the position value here and change that, or play with the math, have the text sort of sit wherever you want, but I was pretty happy just to leave it as is, attached to the middle. And then again, yeah, this comp should already be connected to the rest of the components, and you should now be able to turn on the background with this little blue button, and you should have some text. And that's the whole tutorial. Sorry, this was a bit of a mindful to get through. A lot of different effects going on in here. I'm also a bit of a yapper, so not a great combination. But if you've made it this far, I greatly appreciate you following through the video. A like would be extremely appreciated. YouTube tells me that only 90% of people that watch my videos are not subscribed. So if that is you, please hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to drop tutorials all the time on just pretty much anything, like anything from very stylized content like this to just like simple effects. And this tutorial came out because people requested it. So if you have literally anything you'd want a tutorial on, you see something someone does that's really cool and you want to know how to do it, send me a message, drop a comment, I'll make it for free. I want this all to be like freely accessible. I don't want anyone to have to pay to get access to this content and information, but if you do want to make it convenient for yourself or even just support me, please head over to my Patreon below. It's just a couple bucks a month and it's gonna make a world of a difference, and hopefully I can keep doing this all for you guys and making bigger and better content. But let's wrap it there, leave it under 35 barely on my recording, but it's probably just hit that in the video. But yeah, Thank you so much for watching and enjoy your day.